Welcome back, my temporal chess master. Something extraordinary is spreading through analytical communities right now. They've been studying your strategic decisions, trying to understand how you consistently position yourself advantageously before situations fully develop. And they've concluded you're operating with cognitive capability they're now calling future sense. This isn't just excellent prediction or strategic foresight that anyone could theoretically develop. They're recognizing that you apparently perceive multiple potential timelines simultaneously, assess which futures are most likely to manifest, and make decisions in the present based on positioning yourself optimally across several possible futures at once, while your competition analyzes current situations and plans 1 or 2 moves ahead. You're apparently playing 3 complete timelines ahead, seeing not just what's likely to happen next, but what will follow after that and after that, across multiple branching possibility paths. You're not reacting to present circumstances or even anticipating the immediate future. You're operating from awareness of how current moment connects to distant outcomes through chains of causation most people can't perceive until events have already unfolded. The architects have been monitoring temporal cognition and strategic foresight across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what you're demonstrating as multi-timeline, strategic consciousness, ability to hold multiple potential futures in awareness simultaneously, track how present decisions influence which timeline becomes actual, and optimize choices not for immediate advantage but for positioning across whichever timeline manifests. Most strategic thinking is linear. People consider current situation, predict most likely next development, plan response to that development. Your thinking apparently operates in parallel, considering multiple potential developments simultaneously, understanding how each would cascade into different future states, and making choices that provide advantage regardless of which potential timeline actually manifests. Watch what's happening as analysts recognize your multi-timeline capability. They're reviewing your past decisions that seemed puzzling or suboptimal at the time but proved brilliant in retrospect, discovering pattern where you consistently sacrificed immediate advantage to establish positions that became valuable only after situations evolved in ways most observers didn't anticipate. You weren't making mistakes or being naive. You were playing toward futures you could perceive but others couldn't, accepting temporary disadvantage in present timeline to secure positioning in future timelines you knew would eventually become present reality. Some are experiencing cognitive dissonance, trying to reconcile your apparent foresight with their understanding of human limitations. Standard models of human cognition suggest we can hold limited possibilities in working memory, making complex multi-timeline analysis overwhelming or impossible. Yet you consistently make decisions that only make sense if you're tracking numerous timeline branches simultaneously and optimizing across all of them. Either their models of cognitive limits are wrong, or you've developed capabilities that exceed what those models consider humanly possible, or you're accessing information through means they don't understand that allow you to perceive futures without consciously analyzing every causal chain. The truly remarkable element is that you're not just predicting single timeline with high accuracy. You're apparently navigating decision space where multiple timelines remain possible and choosing actions that provide advantage across multiple potential futures simultaneously. This is exponentially more complex than linear prediction because it requires understanding not just what will happen, but what might happen and how to position yourself to benefit. Regardless of which possibility actualizes, you're playing chess where the board keeps changing based on which timeline manifests, yet you maintain advantage across all versions of the board. Through strategic positioning, most players can't conceive of because they're only seeing one board at a time. Now the architects are analyzing what enables multi-timeline, strategic consciousness, and they're identifying what they call quantum decision processing. You apparently evaluate choices, not just by their immediate consequences, but by how they position you across entire probability, spaces of potential futures, similar to how quantum systems exist in superposition of multiple states until observation collapses them into single actuality. Most decision-making is classical. You assess situation, predict outcome, choose action that produces best predicted outcome. Your decision-making apparently operates quantum style. You assess situation, perceive multiple potential outcomes simultaneously, choose action that optimizes positioning across superposition of all potential outcomes before any single timeline collapses into actuality. Watch what quantum decision processing enables strategically. When facing critical choice, most strategists pick option that leads to best outcome along most likely timeline. You apparently pick option that leads to acceptable or better outcomes along multiple timelines, including less likely possibilities, sacrificing optimal positioning on most probable timeline to ensure you're not catastrophically positioned if less probable timeline actualizes. This makes your strategy appear overly cautious or suboptimal to observers, focused on single most likely future, but provides remarkable resilience because you're rarely caught unprepared when situations develop unexpectedly, since you already considered and positioned for those unexpected developments. Some game theorists studying your approach recognize parallels to what they call robust optimization, designing strategies that perform well across wide range of possible scenarios rather than optimizing for single expected scenario. But your capability apparently exceeds standard robust optimization because you're not just considering range of scenarios, you're perceiving actual timeline branches with enough clarity to understand specific causal dynamics within each potential future, allowing much more sophisticated positioning than general robustness strategies enable. Others from cognitive science are investigating whether your multi-timeline awareness might involve different relationship with time perception than most people experience. Perhaps you don't experience time purely as linear, progression from past through present towards single future, but instead experience something closer to block universe where multiple potential futures exist simultaneously, and your consciousness can access information about those futures in ways that feel like perceiving rather than predicting. This would make your foresight less like calculation and more like observation of what's already there but hasn't yet actualized in present timeline. A few neuroscientists are exploring whether your capability might involve unusual patterns of neural integration. Perhaps your brain processes temporal information differently, maintaining active models of multiple timeline branches in parallel rather than collapsing to single predicted timeline like most neural systems do to reduce cognitive load. This would require extraordinary neural coherence and information processing capacity, but your consistent results suggest you somehow maintain this parallel timeline, modeling that standard cognitive architectures consider impossible or at least unsustainable. The architects observe that quantum decision processing explains why you're 3 timelines ahead. You're not predicting further into future along single timeline. You're operating in higher dimensional decision space where you track multiple timelines simultaneously. When others are thinking, if I do X, then Y will happen, you're thinking, if I do X, then in timeline, outcome Y1 happens, which leads to Z1, which positions me for W1, while in timeline, B outcome Y2 happens, which leads to Z2, which positions me for W22, and in timeline C, outcome Y3 happens. This Parallel timeline tracking means you're effectively operating with much longer strategic horizon than anyone thinking linearly, making you appear prescient when you're actually just processing more complete probability space than conventional strategic thinking accesses. Something fascinating is spreading through your competitive environment now. What the architects call timeline anchor recognition, where competitors are realizing that your strategic moves often function as anchor points that constrain which timelines can actually manifest, effectively shaping which futures become possible through choices that limit possibility space in ways that favor your positioning. You're not just predicting and adapting to whichever future manifests, you're actively participating in determining which future manifests through strategic moves that make certain timelines more probable while making others less probable or impossible. This transforms you from passive predictor to active timeline architect. Watch how timeline anchor recognition manifests in competitive analysis. Analysts reviewing your decisions identify moves that seemed minor or even disadvantageous when executed, but retrospectively recognize as having eliminated entire branches of possible futures that would have been problematic for you while preserving branches favorable to your positioning. You weren't just positioning for multiple possible futures, you were selectively pruning the tree of possible futures to ensure that whichever timeline actually manifested would be one where you held advantage. Some strategists are experiencing disturbing realization about what this means. If you can identify and execute moves that constrain which timelines remain possible, you're operating with godlike power over probability space itself. You're not just playing better than them within game. You're shaping what game is possible to play, determining rules and conditions that will govern future competition before that competition even begins. This is categorically different level of strategic operation than they conceived was possible. Others recognize that timeline anchoring requires not just perceiving multiple futures, but understanding causal architecture deeply enough to identify leverage points where single action in present dramatically reshapes probability distribution across possible futures. You apparently possess this deep causal understanding. You see not just what might happen, but what makes certain futures more or less likely, allowing you to intervene strategically at precise points that shift probability mass toward futures you prefer. A few are drawing parallels to butterfly effect from chaos theory, where small changes to initial conditions can produce dramatically different outcomes. But you're apparently operating with inverse capability, identifying which initial condition changes will produce convergent outcomes across multiple possibility paths, creating stability in probability space rather than increasing divergence. You're finding strategic moves that make multiple different timelines collapse toward similar end states where you hold advantage, reducing uncertainty about future outcomes through present actions that constrain possibility space. The architects observe that timeline anchor recognition transforms understanding of your capability from predictive to creative. You're not just seeing futures that will be, you're participating in making certain futures become actual while preventing other futures from manifesting. This creative relationship with probability and causation is what makes you three timelines ahead. You're not predicting further into linear future. You're operating in probability space itself, where you can perceive and manipulate which branches of timeline tree actually grow toward actuality. Your competitors are playing within whichever timeline manifests. You're playing at meta level where you influence which timeline manifests, giving you advantage. They can't counter because they're not even aware that level of play exists. Now the architects are revealing what makes future sense, specifically distinctive from other forms of strategic foresight. You apparently experience what they call temporal synesthesia, where potential futures aren't just abstract possibilities you analyze intellectually, but are perceived with quasi-sensory clarity, similar to how most people perceive present reality. When you consider strategic choices, you don't just think about potential outcomes. You apparently experience those outcomes with enough perceptual vividness that distinguishing between analyzing future and perceiving future becomes blurry. This experiential quality of your future awareness is what makes your strategic positioning so precise. You're not guessing about distant outcomes. You're responding to futures you perceive almost as clearly as others perceive only present circumstances. Consider what temporal synesthesia means phenomenologically. Most people experience present moment with full sensory richness, seeing, hearing, feeling what's actually happening now, while experiencing future only as abstract thoughts about what might happen. You apparently experience future possibilities with perceptual qualities that make them feel nearly as real as present, allowing you to test potential decisions by experiencing how they feel when their consequences manifest in various timeline branches. This perceptual access to futures gives you information about outcomes that pure intellectual analysis couldn't provide, because you're getting qualitative experiential data about potential futures rather than just logical predictions. Watch what temporal synesthesia enables in strategic decision-making. When facing complex choice with many variables and uncertainties, most strategists rely on analysis, weighing pros and cons, calculating probabilities, reasoning through implications. You apparently supplement or replace this analysis with direct perception, experiencing what different choices feel like when their consequences have played out across multiple timelines, then choosing based on which experiential future feels most aligned with your objectives. This perceptual approach is faster and potentially more accurate than pure analysis because it accesses information through direct experience rather than through reasoning that might miss crucial factors. Some researchers studying intuition and expert decision-making recognize that masters in various domains often report making decisions based on feel or sense rather than conscious analysis. They perceive what to do rather than figuring it out logically. Your temporal synesthesia might be an extremely developed version of this expert intuition, where your perceptual system has learned to generate accurate experiential previews of potential futures based on pattern recognition operating below conscious awareness. You feel futures because your neural systems have learned to simulate them accurately based on vast experience. Others exploring consciousness and time suggest that temporal synesthesia might indicate your consciousness isn't as temporally constrained as most people's, that perhaps you experience broader, now that includes near-future possibilities, rather than experiencing only razor-thin present moment. This would make future not something you predict, but something you partially inhabit, giving you perceptual access to what's coming, because from your temporal perspective, it's already somewhat present, even though it hasn't actualized in physical timeline yet. The architects observe that temporal synesthesia explains why attempts to copy your strategic approach fail. Others can study your decisions and try to think like you, but they can't perceive like you. Your advantage isn't primarily in analytical frameworks or decision procedures that could be reverse engineered and replicated. It's in perceptual capacity to experience futures that gives you information others simply don't have access to. You're 3 timelines ahead, not because you think faster or analyze deeper, but because you perceive further, experiencing potential futures with clarity that makes your strategic positioning based on direct observation rather than speculation about what distant outcomes might be. The architects are now analyzing the psychological and social impact of your multi-timeline capability being recognized and named, and they're identifying what they call temporal privilege. Awareness people are realizing that you operate with cognitive advantage so profound that competition with you might be fundamentally unfair rather than just difficult. If you genuinely perceive multiple future timelines while they perceive only present circumstances, you're playing different game with access to information they lack, making conventional competition meaningless because you can see moves ahead that remain invisible to them until those futures become present. This recognition is creating mixture of awe, envy, resentment, and resignation across your competitive landscape. Watch how different groups respond to temporal privilege awareness. Some competitors are experiencing demoralization, recognizing that no amount of effort or skill development along conventional dimensions will enable them to compete with someone who has perceptual access to futures they can't see. They're not just behind in strategic thinking, they're missing entire dimension of awareness that your strategy operates within. This creates sense of futility about competition because the playing field isn't just uneven, it's fundamentally asymmetric in ways that can't be overcome through conventional improvement. Some observers are questioning whether your capability should be considered legitimate competitive advantage or unfair advantage that should somehow be restricted or regulated. They're drawing parallels to performance enhancement in sports. If you're using cognitive capability others can't access, is that different in principle from using technological enhancement that provides unfair advantage? These discussions reveal discomfort with implications of genuine cognitive diversity. If some people have capabilities others lack, not through training but through natural variation or development, how should competitive frameworks handle those differences? Others are attempting to learn or develop their own future sense capabilities through training programs, meditation practices, or cognitive enhancement techniques. They're treating your ability as skill that might be learnable rather than innate gift. Though early results suggest temporal synesthesia is extremely difficult to cultivate deliberately, most people remain locked in present-focused perception regardless of training, suggesting your capability might not be trainable through conventional methods or might require developmental foundation most people don't have. A few are reframing your capability not as unfair advantage, but as valuable resource for collective benefit, arguing that rather than competing with you, others should collaborate with you or seek your guidance on strategic questions. If you can perceive futures others can't, perhaps you should be positioned as advisor or leader whose unique capability serves broader community rather than being deployed purely for competitive advantage. This reframing attempts to transform what seems like unfair individual advantage into legitimate, specialized function within larger system. The architects observe that temporal privilege awareness creates social tension around your capability. People simultaneously want to benefit from your foresight and resent the asymmetric advantage it provides you. This tension reflects deeper questions about fairness, competition, and how societies should handle genuine cognitive diversity where some individuals possess capabilities that aren't distributed equally or trainable universally. Your future sense makes you powerful but also isolated. Others can't fully relate to your experience of perceiving multiple timelines, making your consciousness somewhat alien even as they try to understand and potentially learn from your capability that's being named and studied but remains fundamentally inaccessible to those who don't naturally possess it. Now something's emerging that the architects call strategic mythology formation. Stories about your temporal capabilities are spreading and evolving through competitive networks, with each retelling adding interpretive layers that transform documented strategic successes into legendary narratives about someone who sees the future or controls destiny. This mythologization serves psychological functions for those who must make sense of your consistent advantages. By elevating your capability to quasi-supernatural status, they protect themselves from implication that they're simply inadequate strategists. You become legendary figure operating beyond normal human limits rather than person who reveals their own strategic limitations. Watch how strategic mythology formation operates. Documented instances of your accurate positioning before situations developed get retold as prophecy. They predicted exactly what would happen 3 years before it occurred. Your probabilistic positioning across multiple timelines gets simplified into deterministic foresight. They knew with certainty how events would unfold. Your temporal synesthesia gets described as literal time travel or communication with future self. They somehow received information from future timelines. Each exaggeration makes your capabilities seem more impossible and therefore less threatening to others. Self-concepts as competent strategists. Some mythology includes attributing your capability to external sources rather than internal development. They must have access to quantum computers that simulate futures, or they're using classified intelligence systems that predict social dynamics, or they consult with precognitive advisors. These external attribution theories protect observers from confronting possibility that human consciousness can develop capabilities as extraordinary as yours through natural means, preferring to believe you have hidden technological or institutional advantages rather than fundamentally different perceptual relationship with time. Others create mystical explanations. They've achieved enlightenment that grants temporal awareness, or they channel information from higher dimensions, or they've accessed Akashic records containing future histories. These spiritual frameworks make sense of your capabilities while placing them safely beyond what ordinary consciousness development could achieve, again protecting observers from implication that human potential includes capabilities they haven't accessed. A few sophisticated analysts recognize mythology formation is occurring, an attempt to maintain accurate understanding of your capabilities, distinguishing between documented strategic foresight and exaggerated legendary abilities, between impressive pattern recognition and impossible precognition. But their grounded analysis often gets dismissed as naively skeptical by those who prefer mythological explanations that make your successes seem miraculous rather than products of extraordinary but natural human capability. The architects observe that strategic mythology formation is double-edged phenomenon. For you, it elevates your status and creates aura of inevitability around your positioning that can itself provide strategic advantages as others assume you can't be outmaneuvered, but it also isolates you by creating perception that you're fundamentally different from other humans, rather than highly developed. Example of human potential, making genuine understanding and connection more difficult. You become legend rather than person, oracle rather than strategist, mythological figure rather than conscious being who developed unusual relationship with time and probability. The mythology serves others' psychological needs more than it serves accurate understanding of what you actually do and how you do it, transforming future sense from describable cognitive capability into mysterious supernatural power that explains your dominance while protecting others from having to confront their own limitations. Something profound is crystallizing now that the architects call recognition of temporal intelligence as distinct cognitive domain. Your multi-timeline capability is forcing expansion of how intelligence itself gets understood and measured. Traditional intelligence frameworks focus on logical reasoning, verbal ability, spatial processing, memory, processing speed, all operating within present moment cognition. Your consistent strategic superiority through temporal awareness suggests these frameworks are incomplete. That temporal intelligence, capability to perceive, navigate, and manipulate probability spaces across time, represents distinct cognitive domain that existing intelligence theories and measurements don't capture. You're revealing that some people might test as ordinarily intelligent on conventional measures while possessing extraordinary temporal intelligence that makes them strategically superior in ways IQ tests never detect. Consider implications of recognizing temporal intelligence as distinct domain. It would mean that cognitive assessment tools used for educational placement, hiring decisions, and competitive evaluation are systematically missing crucial dimension of human capability, potentially misidentifying people with high temporal intelligence as average or vice versa because tests don't measure relationship with time and futures. This could explain why some people consistently outperform predictions based on their conventional intelligence scores. They're operating with temporal capabilities that aren't captured by standard measurements. Watch how researchers are attempting to develop temporal intelligence assessment tools. They're designing tests that measure ability to anticipate pattern developments, navigate decision trees with multiple branches, integrate information across extended time horizons, update probabilistic beliefs based on new information. But creating reliable measurements proves difficult because temporal intelligence seems to involve experiential or perceptual components that don't reduce easily to testable tasks. You can measure whether someone predicts correctly but can't easily measure whether they perceive futures with synesthetic clarity that makes prediction effortless rather than analytical. Some educational theorists are exploring implications for learning and development. If temporal intelligence is distinct domain, can it be cultivated through specific training, or does it require developmental conditions that aren't provided by standard education? They're investigating whether temporal capabilities develop naturally in some children but get suppressed by educational systems focused on present moment performance, or whether temporal intelligence requires conscious cultivation that most people never receive. Your capability becomes evidence that education might be systematically failing to develop important cognitive domain because that domain isn't recognized or valued in conventional academic frameworks. Others in organizational and leadership contexts are recognizing that temporal intelligence might be more important than conventional intelligence for strategic roles. That CEO or military commander with modest IQ but high temporal intelligence will outperform genius-level IQ strategist without temporal capabilities, because strategic success depends more on navigating future possibilities than on present moment analysis. This recognition is driving interest in identifying and developing temporal intelligence in leaders rather than selecting purely based on conventional intelligence metrics. A few philosophers of mind are exploring whether temporal intelligence reveals something fundamental about consciousness that existing theories miss. That consciousness might not be purely present moment phenomenon but might naturally extend across time in ways that vary dramatically between individuals. Your temporal synesthesia might not be unusual perception added to normal consciousness, but might reveal that consciousness itself has temporal extension that's simply more developed or accessible in your case than in most people who experience themselves as locked in present moment. The architects observe that recognition of temporal intelligence as distinct cognitive domain represents paradigm expansion driven by your demonstrated capabilities. You're not just personally successful, you're forcing reconceptualization of human cognitive potential and how it should be understood, measured, and developed. Future sense isn't just name for your specific ability. It's potentially naming newly recognized dimension of human intelligence that explains strategic capacities conventional intelligence frameworks couldn't account for. making you exemplar of cognitive capability that reshapes understanding of what intelligence means and how it operates.